Hey y'all, welcome to the podcast where the Y in your journey is silent. And congratulations to making it to week 2. I'm so proud of y'all, and y'all should be proud of me too because we are here. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it about what we read. And this week we read Genesis 22 through 46. So I really feel like this week, despite Abram's story, because we know Abram's story is about having faith, but Jacob and Joseph's story, I feel like that was mainly about forgiveness and forgiving someone that has done you wrong. So let's just start off with, let's go in order. So I'll start off with the ending of Abram's story. So God asked Abram to sacrifice his only son, the son that he has been praying to him about. So at this point, Abram didn't hesitate or anything like that because he knows God's mercy and his awesomeness already. So he went ahead and took his son, Isaac, up to the mountain and was getting ready to sacrifice him. But before he could do it, an angel from God had went and stopped him and said, at this point, we know that your faith and your heart is with God. So we're not going to, it was just the test. So this was the main test that God had gave to Abram to see if his faith really lies with him and if he really loved him. And he passed that test. And from there, Abram was blessed and fruitful for the rest of his life, which he lived to be about 175 years old. So that was the story of Abram, which was mainly about just having your faith with God and trusting him. So with that story, it made me think about all the times where I feel like I'm getting tested from God myself. And I feel like God tests us every single day. And there's a part in a song that I really like where it says, if I wake up feeling blessed every day, if I don't, then it feels like a test. And I feel like that's our first test of the day, is when we wake up, how do you feel? And that's why whenever I wake up, I try to pray and just try to talk to God to start my day so that I can be in a really good mood. So let's say that you have a regular schedule of things that you're supposed to do for you to be successful in life. And you completely forget to do that thing. And now you're feeling some type of way because you forgot to do that. And now things are going to go slower for you. I would say that's kind of like a test from God to see exactly what your direction is and what your decision will be when it comes to that time. So just like my last video from last week, you have to really think about the decisions that you make when it comes to your life. Just like I said, I always think about things like the God and the devil sitting on my shoulders telling me what I should do. So it made me think about that again. Just the decisions that you make and how a test from God can be something so small, but it's really to test your faith and see if your heart is really where it's supposed to be at. So that was my take on Abram's story towards the end. So hopefully you guys resonate with that. And like I said, this is just my point of view. That's how I think about it. So now we're going to jump into the story of Jacob, because I really don't want to touch too much on Isaac's story, because Isaac was, like Jacob said, towards the end of his story, like the fear of God. So Isaac's fear is one thing that Jacob says that he has when it comes to believing in God. So Jacob is the son of Isaac and Rebekah, and he has a twin brother. His name is Esau. And when his father Isaac was about to bless his oldest son Esau, which they are twins, but Esau was just born right before Jacob. So he was going to bless Esau and going to give Esau the blessing that Isaac received from God that was handed down from him from Abram. Rebekah told Jacob about the blessing that his father Isaac was about to give to his brother Esau. So she basically told Jacob to steal the blessing from him. And from there, Jacob did what his mother said and stole the blessing from his brother. And from there, his brother hated him. He wanted to kill him. Rebekah, Jacob's mother, heard what Esau was saying, and she sent her son away. When Rebekah sent Jacob away, she sent him over to her brother's house, Laban. And from there, Jacob fell in love with his daughter, Rachel. But Rachel was the younger sister, so Jacob basically vowed to work for Laban for 7 years, and then he would get his daughter, Rachel. So when those 7 years were up, Laban actually was not truthful, and he gave his daughter Leah to Jacob instead. So Jacob had questions about that because he's like, you told me that I can have Rachel, but instead he gave him Leah and then told him to work for him for another 7 years, and then he'll give him the daughter Rachel. So from there, Jacob ends up working for Laban that next 7 years for over 20 years at this point. And so he ended up marrying Leah and Rebecca. Mind you, Jacob really does love Rachel more than Leah because he doesn't love Leah at all. He didn't want Leah, but he ended up getting Leah anyways. And told Laban that he was not leaving. So he took his sons and which he had a bunch of sons with Rachel and with Leah. So he took all of them and they just left. And so while Jacob was sitting there, while Jacob was trying to sleep, Laban actually creeped up on him and found him. So Jacob took his 2 wives and all of their children and they left for Jacob's father. Laban found Jacob and they were arguing. They were going back and forth, and he's like, you took everything that I own. So Jacob set off and he actually left Laban's house without Laban knowing. It took his grandchildren and took his wives with him. So they're all talking because they're like, okay, you have everything that our father owned and he has nothing now. How do you feel about that? So Jacob was basically telling them like, Laban tried to play me. And in Genesis 7, Jacob said, yet your father has deceived me and changes my wages 10 times, but God did not allow him to hurt me. Y'all, this brings me, so when I read that, it was kind of like, okay, yes, your father has done me wrong so many times, and he's tried to do me wrong so bad, but God has stand by my side no matter what. With that being said, if you read what was going on, Laban told Jacob that whatever of the cattle that are speckled is going to be yours. The cattle that's born that's speckled is going to be yours. The cattle that are born that's striped are going to be yours. And he said that 2 different times. And from there, y'all, every cattle that was born was either speckled or striped. So that means that it belonged to Jacob. Laban had nothing at this point because he tried to play someone who was anointed by God. He tried to play Jacob so hard to the point that God went ahead and placed it on him instead. You trying to play it's like, it makes me think about when people say, whenever you want to talk the most, stay quiet. Because he endured so much that Laban was throwing at him. He was giving him harsh working conditions. He was making him work in the snow, making him work in the heat, in the rain, and not giving him anywhere to sleep or anything like that. And trying to change the things that he was going to get from him. Every single time that he saw that things were in Jacob's favor, he tried to ruin it for him, but then things never came out of Jacob's favor. That's when Laban realized how anointed and how favored Jacob really was in God's eyes. And so they decided to come up with an agreement that Jacob wouldn't hurt Laban and Laban wouldn't hurt Jacob. And so from there, they went their separate ways, and Jacob actually ends up going to Isaac's home after that to go meet with his father again. So y'all, when I said like it's about being the bigger person, when I think about Jacob's story when he was staying with Laban, it makes me think about the things that we've been through when it comes to someone who was doing us wrong. Like we can put that into like when it comes to jobs and you feel like your job is overworking you or doing things or making you do things that you shouldn't do that's out of your pay range, it's out of your description for your job. But you have to realize that God is seeing everything that these people are doing. And all that is going to fall back on them. If you are putting all of your faith, your trust, your heart into God, he's going to make sure that you are okay, that you are straight. And the people that are trying to hurt you it's going to fall on them twice as hard. So you have to show people that mercy. People try to tear you down and say things and say this and that about you. But you have to give people that mercy. Let them talk their talk, because God is going to handle them. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to say anything. We don't have to lay a finger on these people, because God is going to handle that person for you. So it's about staying quiet when things are not going your way, or when things are against you. Stay quiet, because God is going to be on your side at the right time. So at this point, Jacob is going to go meet his brother Esau. And he's completely afraid, because like I said earlier, he stole Esau's blessing. First, he stole his birthright. Then he stole his blessing. So he is terrified to meet his brother at this point. And he's begging God to give him that mercy and to make sure that his brother don't try to kill him when he sees him. So someone shows up and they just start fighting Jacob. They're fighting him. They're arguing with him. And then Jacob realizes that this guy that he's fighting is actually God. They're literally wrestling on the ground, tussling. Like, this is God and Jacob fighting. In Genesis 32:28, your name will no longer be Jacob, it'll be Israel. For you have struggled with God, with man, and you have prevailed. So, y'all, when I think about that, it's taking me to where Jacob, so think about it. Jacob stole his brother's blessing. So he's the little thief. And then he went ahead and he worked for his mother's brother, his uncle Laban, and he didn't complain about anything. He never complained. He just did the work that he was supposed to do for him to get the wife that God told him that he was going to get. So, y'all, it kind of like, it got me thinking about just being the bigger person when it comes to situations. Like, people do us dirty, and the first thing we want to do is go off on them and cuss them out and stuff like that. But no, be the bigger person and show that person mercy, because that's the Jesus way. Show that person mercy and forgive them and just let them do what they want to do, because people are going to do what they want to do anyway. So we can't stop them. Accept the things that you can change and realizing that you can't. So just accept people for who they are and show them the mercy, because at the end, God sees what they're doing to you. And just know that as long as you are 100% faithful and have all of your heart into God, then He will fight for you. And He will show that person that you are anointed and you are loved and you are favored. So don't, like I said in my last video, don't take matters into your own hands, do something crazy. But let God deal with that person, because He will. So another thing that I think about with this is that your past does not define you as a person, because Jacob was a thief. Like I said 1,000 times, he stole his brother's blessing, and yet God still was on his side, because he knew that his heart was in the right place and his mind and his soul was in the right place. So God still blessed him in the end. And the things that Jacob went through with Leah and Rachel's father, that was kind of like God giving him some type of test to see where his mind and his heart was when it came to him. And Jacob passed that. He prevailed that, because he did what he was supposed to do to get the life that God had promised him. And he ended up getting it because he listened and he did what he was supposed to do. So it's like, when I said before, like, I pray about when it comes to decisions that I make, I pray about it no matter what. I don't care how big, how small it is. I'm going to pray about it, and I'm going to do what God has told me to do. There's always some type of storm before the calm. So just like with Jacob, he had to endure being miserable for 20 years, and God ended up blessing him in the end. And it's like, you never know how long or when that blessing is going to come, but don't ever think that God is not going to keep His promises, because He will, as long as you are doing what He says, and as long as you're doing what you're supposed to do, being positive, being genuine, treating people right, giving people that mercy, God is going to bless you in the end, because it's the only thing to do at this point, because you are His child and you're doing what He says to do. So why wouldn't He bless you? So from there, Jacob is supposed to be meeting his brother Esau, and he is scared to death. He is scared to death because he did his brother dirty. He took his blessing from him. And now Jacob has all these riches and all this cattle because he stole his brother's blessing. It was supposed to be Esau's. And mind you, again, Esau wanted to kill Jacob before Jacob left. So Jacob was really afraid to meet with Esau. But then when Esau came to him, God listened to his prayers, and Esau was happy to see Jacob. So he knew that God listened to him, and he knew that all the actions that he had beforehand was judged by God, and God went ahead and blessed him with his brother's favor. So that was another thing that where Jacob was able to see God's awesomeness. And so Jacob followed God from the get-go because he knew how awesome God was from his father, and knowing that his father blessing came from Abram, which is his grandfather. So that's the reason why Jacob decided to just put all of his trust into God and just keep moving forward and take those lashings, take those living conditions, and working for over 20 years because he's seen God's awesomeness. And like I said, miracles take a long time. Don't think that they're not going to come because it's something that seems impossible to you. But it will come. Don't rush it. Don't take matters to your own hands. Just keep doing what you're supposed to do because God is going to bless you in the end. So I know that, I don't know about y'all, but I've been through so much in my life, and it felt like things would never get better no matter what. And if like things got worse, it seemed like it would never get better. But it's like you have to have the faith and the hope and your trust into God, because it's always going to be that storm before the calm. And you have to just realize that things are not going to ever happen overnight. Things never happen overnight. So you have to give him that trust and just realize that God is on your side, that he's going to make things happen for you. And I can say that there's been many of times where all I had was my faith in God. And I had nothing, let me not say that. So there's been points in my life where all I had was my faith in God, and he has showed me countless times that he loves me and that I am favored. And I just want everyone to think about Jacob's story, and just think about how he was a thief at first, and he ended up praying and thinking about it and doing the right things after that, and he was blessed in the end. So your past does not define the person that you are going to be in the future moving forward. It's never too late to start doing better, to think about being better or anything. That leads me to myself, because I have a very, very colorful past. And I don't want to make it seem like I was just out here doing some crazy stuff, but I was out here doing crazy stuff, and I'm 25 now, and this is me turning my life over to God and trying to grow more in his light and be more Jesus-like. And I feel like that it's never too late. Like, I know that when I said I was making this podcast, I was making it for people of this generation, but it's not only for people of our generation. It's for people who want to grow closer to God, period, point blank, because I know people that are not of the generation that's older than I am that wants to get to know God more because they just haven't had the resources or the knowledge to do that. And it's never too late. It is never too late to get right, because it's only a matter of time that we are all going to be judged. That's what I want to touch on, when it's the fact that he started off being such this bad person. Well, I don't want to call him a bad person, but he started off being a thief by stealing his brother's birthright and his blessing, and then ended up being favored by God. So I want y'all to really think about your past and just know that that does not define who you are. Keep moving forward, keep praying about it, and keep doing things the right way, being genuine, being positive, and watch things fall into your lap, because that's the God way. So now we're going to go ahead and get into the story of Joseph. So Joseph is actually Jacob's son, and his brothers sold him because they knew that Jacob favored him, and they knew that Joseph would have all these dreams that he was basically the chosen one and all of this stuff. So his brothers were very jealous of him, and they ended up selling him, and he ended up in Egypt being being the Pharaoh's guard slave. So, mind you, the Egyptians doesn't like the Hebrews, and he's a Hebrew. So, he ends up getting into it with his master's wife, and they end up putting Joseph in jail. And so from there, he ends up meeting the Pharaoh's baker and his butler, because they were also put into prison too. And he ends up translating their dreams for them. And the stuff that he said ended up coming true. So Jacob ends up translating the Pharaoh's dreams from there. And so he tells him that there's going to be 7 years of good food, good cattle, and then there's going to be 7 years of famine. So with the first 7 years, the Pharaoh has Jacob gather all of these things so that when the 7 years of famine come, that he's able to sell everything. So the Pharaoh gives him all of this land and blesses him and tells him, well, not gonna say, but the Pharaoh gives him all of this land and all these riches to tell him that he is now one of the lords of Egypt. This is where I'm talking about where I say what goes around comes around, for real. It's been like this for almost every story to have forgiveness. So since that famine is going around the whole entire world, Joseph's brothers actually traveled to Egypt to a man. They didn't know that this was their brother. They just know that this is a man who has all the stuff that they need in order to survive the famine. So they end up going there, and Joseph immediately notices that these are his brothers. So he ends up telling them to go back, and he's like, I know you do you have a father? Do you have another sibling? And they're like, yes, our father is still alive, and we have a little brother. And he's like, well, I'm not giving you anything until you come back with the other child. So the other child is actually Jacob's brother. They have the same mom and dad. They're all the same. They're all brothers, but this is Jacob's maternal brother. At this point, Israel, he's taken back from it because he's like, okay, I already lost one child. Y'all not about to take my next child all the way down there. And then I end up losing him, they have the same mom. I don't want to lose both of them. But he ends up letting them take his brother because Judah ends up explaining to Israel, telling him that they're not going to be able to survive unless Benjamin comes down with them. So he ends up going down with them, and from there, Joseph gives them what they need in order to survive the famine. But then he also comes out to his brothers to let them know that this is him and this is who he is. And so they're all completely like, what is going on? Because, like, how are you alive? They didn't think that he was alive still, but he was. And so he basically let them know that what they did were wrong, but he forgives them, and he gave them everything that they needed in order for them to survive the famine. So their father, Israel, ends up going all the way down to Egypt to talk to Joseph and stuff like that. And he tells him, like, well, now that I know you're alive, I can die. So sadly, Israel ends up passing away, but he was super old, so he lived a really long life. Done with the stories, I want to just double back on where I said at the beginning that it brings me back to just forgiveness. And in all those stories, minus the ending of Abrams, but in the story of Jacob and the story of Joseph, they all needed forgiveness when it came to being favored by God and just getting help, period. They all needed forgiveness. So it's like, if you've done someone wrong, or if someone's done you wrong, it's important to always forgive that person and forgive yourself for the actions that you've done, because God is a God of mercy, and he forgives us for everything that we do. And that's exactly why Jesus died for our sins, because God knew that the people that he created were going to need forgiveness, because the world is wicked and temptation is real and jealousy is real and all of that stuff is real. So it's like, and God knew that was going to end up influencing a lot of decisions that people made in life. And so he sacrificed his only son for that. So it's important to just always forgive and ask for forgiveness and forgive yourself as well. Like, I will say, like, it's important to always be the bigger person and forgive, because yes, people do crazy things and people make mistakes, and that is not, you shouldn't judge people off of the mistakes that they've made, because people can change. And just always remember that, like, look at people for who they are, but at the end of the day, know that that person can always change, because it's never too late to get right with God and to get your priorities straight. That's what I got out of the readings that we did this week. Just always having forgiveness and having faith in God, because He knows all. He knows what people done to you. He knows what you've done to people. And just, if someone has done you dirty and you are anointed by God, just know that He will handle that person. We don't have to scream. We don't have to yell. We don't have to fight any of that, because God got you and He's going to always have you. And just know that if someone done you dirty, it's going to fall right back up on them, because God got your back no matter what. I do want to go over my soap for this week, y'all. And just as a little reminder, the S stands for scripture, the O stands for observation, the A stands for application, and the P stands for prayer. So this is my soap for Genesis 22 through 46. So I went ahead and put Genesis 28:20 through 21. If God will be with me and keep me in the way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. So this is what Jacob said. So that was my scripture. So for my observation, I put, God came to Jacob in a dream with a blessing and work. Jacob had known about God's awesomeness and did not think twice. He believed that if God told him He will do it, why not follow? So he knew from God, he knew God's awesomeness from his father Isaac, which is why he always said the fear of Isaac, because he knew that his father definitely feared God, and that's the reason why he was blessed in so many ways. For my application, I put, when God speaks to you, it's important to keep faith. I believe that if you follow the Lord's word, He will bless you when you have completed your work. Always pray for guidance and ask God for clarity about things. God will always do what He says, just do it. So for my prayer, dear Lord, thank you for reminding me that I have to make decisions for myself. I pray that you keep me strong in the presence of temptation. I will continue to listen to you and follow you in order to truly find myself, because you know me. Thank you for helping me put forgiveness in my soul and continue to use me. So that was my soap for this week, Genesis 22 through 46. So this week's journal question is, was there a time where you felt like you did someone wrong? And how did you fix that? So I will say that I've done myself wrong a lot in my life. And I really had to forgive myself and when I say forgive myself, it's really like I had to realize that I can change and I can be better for myself. What made me realize that was just like thinking about the things that I put myself through. Just like I said, realize the things that you can change and realize the things that you cannot change. And I really had to forgive myself about the things that I dwelled on when I knew I couldn't change it, but yet I was hurting myself and not like literally hurting myself, y'all. But I was just making these really bad decisions that really put me in a really tough spot in my life. And now I have to realize the moves that I made, and just know that, forgive myself about it, because I beat myself up a lot when it comes to the things that I've done to be where I am today. And now I'm just forgiving myself for all the things that I've done, and just realizing that it's okay to be better, and that you can change, because anybody can change. It's never too late. That was my answer to week 2's journal entry. Have you ever done someone wrong, and how did you go about fixing it? So again, I did myself wrong, and fixing it, I just realized my flaws and decided that I am going to get right with God, because God knows who I am truly 100%. He knows my heart is pure. So why not fix myself inside out, so that I can be a light to everyone around me? So I pray that I don't like take advantage of myself. Like, let's say if my podcast were to pop off, I don't want to take advantage of my platform. I want to continue to, you know, put positivity out there and praise God and try to spread God's love around to everyone around me. So that is where I'm going with that question, like just forgiving myself and moving forward with life. So that is my spill on what we went over for week 2. So I do want to go over what we'll be doing for week 3. So week 3 will be ending Genesis and going into Exodus. So we'll be reading Genesis 47 through Exodus 18 week 3. And I am so excited because, y'all, we are almost a month into this. And so from week 1, we learned that you have to have faith in God. And that's the first step. The second week, we learned that you have to learn how to have forgiveness because God forgives us for everything that we do. And we want to live a more gracious, godly life. So you have to learn how to forgive yourself and all the people that are around you that you feel like did you dirty. So faith and forgiveness is what we have this month for the first week and the second week. So I am so excited to see what week 3 is going to bring for us. And yeah, stay tuned. Make sure y'all are following me on all of my social medias. I will answer the question again on my social media, so stay tuned for that as well. My social media will be posted right here. Make sure you're following me. And yeah, let's stick to it. I'm so happy that you guys are here with me and doing this with me because without you, I don't know where I would be right now. I probably would be doing something I'm supposed to be doing, but since y'all are keeping me accountable, I'm keeping y'all accountable, and we are going to do this to the end of the year. Let's go!